4 wins out of 4 for India, and they go through to the Super 8 with an unblemished record. Usually, with a scenario like this, it's a thing to be happy about. It's a thing to be confident about. And while India's performance does give you that confidence that you've sailed through to the Super 8, yet it also keeps you a bit nervous somewhere deep inside you for an Indian fan. And why is that? Because there are still a few problem areas that seem to exist with this Indian team. And if you want India to retain this title, if you want India to be the first country to retain the T20 World Cup, then the men in blue will have to fix a few things, starting with the most obvious one, which is their batting. Now, you had a Shivam Dube come up with an outstanding knock today on an occasion. You've had Ishan Kishan do that. On an occasion, you've got Suryakumar Yadav do that for the Indian team. But not once in this entire tournament has the entire Indian batting unit really come through. And that is a sign of worry. Why? Because you got into this World Cup at the back of some outstanding performance. Dare I say, we were even a bit arrogant about India's batting performance, and for good reason, because they clearly look like the best batting unit in T20 cricket. They were decimating opposition. Everyone from number 1 to number 8 would bat aggressively, hit 6s and 4s for fun and notch up scores of almost close to 300, 230, 240 were the norms. That's not happened, and that's primarily, as I said, because of everyone not firing. Today you are in a scenario, you won those 4 games, but let's take a look at the Netherlands game only. If it wasn't for a Varun Chakravarthy or Jasprit Bumrah, and that's the other thing about this Indian team, you have 2 of the best T20 bowlers on the planet right now, without doubt, in Jasprit Bumrah, Varun Chakravarthy, and both are cheat codes. Today you had Netherlands almost, come 17 runs close to the target. If you got 193, they got 176. So they came very close. If it wasn't for the 2 cheat codes that you had, who bowled a total of 6 overs between themselves, who knows? A minnows like Netherlands could chase it down. Now the thing will be, can you afford to have this sort of a batting performance against top-notch teams like South Africa or a West Indies? Maybe if you come up against a New Zealand or an England, who knows? Can you win? The answer to that may be yes. Maybe you can win. But once again, you will win primarily with this form if this continues, because of the 2 bowlers that you have. Now imagine in this Netherlands game, if you had rotated and if you didn't have a Jasprit Bumrah and a Varun Chakravarthy not play this game, you had a Siraj and maybe Kuldeep Yadav or Akshar Patel play instead of Varun. There's a possibility Netherlands could have chased it down. So can you go into this tournament with this sort of a batting? I don't think so. It's your bowling and 2 bowlers in particular who have been outstanding that is ensuring that India go through without having lost the match. This might, as I repeat, this might help you in the matches going forward as well, might help you in Super 8s also, Varun Chakravarthy and Jasprit Bumrah, but you just don't want to be over-reliant on them. Indian batting will have to fire, especially on good pitches. In Colombo, 175 was good enough because it wasn't a good pitch. I think it was an above par total. But when you've been playing in grounds like Mumbai, in grounds like Ahmedabad, which are absolute belters, you expect those 220, 230, which hasn't been coming from this Indian team. And that takes me to the 2 batters who are under scrutiny. I'll start with Abhishek. I was reading somewhere that out of the 8 knocks that he's played, 5 have been ducked. So quite a patchy time for him. I think he'll do well to pay heed to the advice of Mr. Gavaskar, who said on Sports Today that just get a single. That nervousness that you have will go away, and then from there on you can attack, but just get that single. Maybe he really needs to consider that and do that. Having said that, see, he's not had a great time now. You can look at it positively and say maybe the worst is behind him. Anyway, the tournament starts proper now. If he was to get a good knock versus the South Africa and help you win, you'd say, worth it. Group stages, we really didn't need him. So good, his bad patch was there. Now he's gotten into form. So I think the Indian team will take it. But in that rare scenario, he doesn't fire, would India look at dropping him? I know there will be a debate over it, but you ask me personally, I don't think India will do that. In all likelihood, even if he doesn't get too many runs, I think they might persist with him throughout the World Cup. I think changing people in the middle of a World Cup is a rare thing. And I think all of that will also depend on the results. If runs don't come through his bat, but India keep on winning, I think you'll ignore him. Also because of what he brings to the table, I think the Indian team really believes in his talent. They know that on a day he fires, he can win you the game. And that gamble may allow the Indian team to go through with him through the tournament, even if he doesn't fire in the next game or two, because you'll hope, okay, semi-final, he'll be the guy who will win us, or final, he'll be the guy who can win us. He very well can. And I think because of that factor that he brings, there's a good chance that the Indian team will continue. And for those of you who might think that Sanju Samson comes in, that may not be the case. I think the only time you'll change a player like Abhishek or anybody else in the top order will be because of an injury. That's the only time I see the Indian team really making a change, or unless they have two shocking losses and it becomes a must win. I think 2 shocking losses will knock you out, but you have a close shave and a shocking loss, and then you barely qualify and he's not fired in the entire Super 8s. Maybe then you change for the semis. I don't know, I can't predict the future, but as of now I see the chances of Abhishek being taken out of the playing 11 being very remote. The other one that is really not living up to the billing has been Tilak Varma. I know he's chipped in with a few valuable contributions, but I think the problem with India is that every time they've got a par total or above par total, one of the 2 openers have fired. So there was a Sanju Samson also who gave you a good start in that one-off game that he played, or for that matter Ishan Kishan. Whenever he's done well, you've done well. But in a scenario when both the openers don't do well, that's when you need the number 3 to also up the tempo. Those runs that Tilak has been getting, I think, have lacked a bit of aggression, have lacked that tempo, and that is causing a bit of a downslide, and then that puts a lot of pressure in the batter that comes in. If you remember Hardik Pandya coming and playing the rash stroke versus Pakistan, I think it's because of the pressure that built up earlier as well, of Tilak trying to play like that. And then there is a past history of Tilak sometime getting caught in the rut. You remember the IPL? He was retired hurt by his team because he really couldn't get going. Sometimes he has a tendency to fall into a shell, and then sometimes he's phenomenal, like the Tilak we saw get hundreds for fun in T20 cricket, was aggressive. But then comes a phase where he gets into a bit of a shell and then can't keep attacking. Number 3 becomes very important. Surya on occasions has also been trying to be the captain and rotating strike, and then if 3 and 4 are like that, it just adds on pressure to the rest of the batting, and especially a batting that prides itself in batting aggressively. I think that approach of Tilak needs to change. Some might argue that how about you get Sanju in, and then Ishan can go to 3 and Sanju and Abhishek can open. That might sort out problems. That's also a valid suggestion, but I don't think the Indian think tank will make any changes to Tilak as well, not at the moment. What happens in a game or two? What if you lose to South Africa and some of the players that we are talking about don't fire? Do they then change their mind for must-win games thereafter? We don't know. But as of now, I don't see any changes happening. However, a good pep talk to Tilak and the approach that he must have should be had right now. And finally, because we're talking about individuals, this was a game versus Netherlands where few experiments were made, and one of those experiments was to bring Washington Sundar in for Akshar. I think that was done to see if going forward, let's say in a game like South Africa which has many left-handers, can you replace Akshar because he's a left-hand spinner, and you've got an Abhishek also to do that, get an off-spinner for the left-handers and off-spinning all-rounder where Washi can give you the same thing with the bat and then a different variation with the ball. After this experiment with the Netherlands, I'm convinced that it wouldn't be a good idea to bring Washi, even if you have left-handers. I think Akshar, the bowler, has proven that he's a far better spin bowler you can rely on. Washington's really lack that bite when it comes to his bowling. I have no doubt that as a batter, he might match Akshar Patel, no doubt about that. But I think at the moment, if you also need a spin bowling all-rounder with good batting abilities, then I think clear-cut Akshar Patel, even if the opposition has enough left-handers. So maybe from this experiment versus Netherlands, India can take a leaf out of this particular game. And if they had any doubts over some situation, Washi or Akshar, those doubts should be put to bed. Only Akshar Patel, your first choice spin bowling all-rounder. Yes, you want to go with another spinner alongside Akshar, and if you want him to be an all-rounder, maybe in conditions where you need another spinner, you can think about it. Maybe for a batter like Rinku, you then bring in a Washington Sundar. That can be a thought, though I wouldn't do it, but I'm still saying that is something that you can think about. If you really come across a turning track, which I doubt you will here, maybe Sri Lanka, Not here. So for the moment, Akshar Patel should continue to be your first choice spinning all-rounder. Give us a like on the video if you're enjoying our content. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to Sports Today. Our continuous coverage of the T20 World Cup continues here. Bye-bye.